teach already. Faith was supposed to be the only prize to enter the kingdom of heaven. But Chris found some quotes in the Urantia book that in some situations other prizes were asked for, and not the same for everyone. But the Urantia book is not always clear, not always univocal. Chris takes us to one of those confusions and shares with us how he tries to find his way with them. My one pet evil, Jesus at the border of evolution and revelation. Chris Wood.
Hello. I love the last day of the Urantia conference. You know, at some point in our ascension career, we will come to truly realize that time is meaningless, and nothing gives us that appreciation like the last day of a Urantia conference. The spontaneity of what you never know what might happen. So, there's a part of the Urantia book which I do not understand. To be fair, there are hundreds of parts of the Urantia book which I do not understand, from the concept of the I Am, to the exact nature and purpose of the Mid-Siniders and why the existence of such beings were included in the Urantia book, to exactly how many sisters did Jesus' mother Mary have? But these are mere concepts that I don't understand, mere facts that I lack or cannot grasp. None of those really bother me. But there is one part of the Urantia book that I do not understand, and it truly bothers me. It comes from the Apostles' Papers. Here it is. Peter was married, and he had 3 children. James Zebedee was married with 4 children. Philip was married. See how the clicks are going. Oh, they went too fast. Oh, well, kids. Matthew was married with 4 kids. Thomas was married with 4 kids. James Alphaeus was married with 3 children. Judas Alphaeus was married with 2 children. I'm married. I have 2 children. Jesus asked his apostles to leave behind their earthly concerns, their worldly pursuits, and their mortal responsibilities. This included their families. And yes, provisions were made for their care, but the apostles were not part of the daily lives of these families. We're told that when all is said and done, the father idea is still the highest human concept of God, but these fathers were absent. It reminds me of something a younger Jesus said when he was offered financial support in order to free him from the duties of raising his brothers and sisters. Jesus said, "No amount of money can take the place of his obligation to personally rear his father's family, to fulfill the most sacred of all human trusts, loyalty to one's own flesh and blood." To be an apostle, it seems, means that you have to bypass the trials and rewards of the mortal career and try to live as a morontial being. We're told that the family unit is not of a heavenly construct. Jesus called attention to the fact that the family is a temporal institution, that it does not survive death. But still, it seems to be the antithesis of the ascension career. After all, the fastest way for a tadpole to become a frog is to live loyally each day as a tadpole. Jesus took his collection of tadpole apostles and required them to live as frogs. I have great sympathy for the apostles because of this. While studying the Urantia book, we are often amazed at how obtuse the apostles seemed, but when we consider that they were handed a revelation beyond their life experience, their confusion makes sense, or at least it does to me. After all, I'm just as confused by the concept of the I Am, or the Mid-Siniders, or the Ancients of Days, or the various oddities, and many other concepts from the Urantia book, and I hope future generations will have sympathy when they consider my lack of confusion and lack of experience in these areas. But still, As a mortal of the realm, I find it hard to contemplate this level of sacrifice, to leave behind the mortal duties that one has towards family. And if I were to be honest with myself, I don't think if I were presented with the choice that I'd be willing to accept the burdens of apostleship. A friend of ours likes to ask, if the Heavenly Father were to knock on your door and ask to speak for 20 minutes, would you do it? Well, of course, we all say. But if Jesus were to knock on my door and ask me to leave my family and dedicate the remainder of my life to his apostleship, I'm not sure that I would say yes. I think I would rather live loyally as a tadpole. This has always bothered me. Since this is a short speech, followed by a group discussion, I decided to put the problem before all of us and to share with how I am working through this problem. It is not a complete thought. I have not yet come to an absolutely satisfactory conclusion, but I have some ideas that I would like to share with you in your discussion groups. And of course, it all hinges upon what kind of teacher Jesus was and what kind of student we strive to be. Jesus was both the Son of Man and the Son of God. He came to live a revelation of God to his people, but at the same time to reveal mortals to his Father. And so Jesus taught different lessons to different audiences. He would reveal advanced truths and revelations to the apostles, his chosen representatives on earth. But that came as a cost. The apostles had to live as if they were already on Mansonia. They had to live the true values of a larger universal family. At the same time, Jesus would teach the masses. And to the masses, he would not give revelation like he would to the apostles, but he would uplift their evolutionary religious understandings. He did this through the use of stories and parables and the mastery of the Hebrew texts, and through a deep understanding of how each person lives their lives. There's a great divide between progressive evolution and revelation. Progressive evolution is bottom up, revelation is top down. We are told that the watchword of the universe is progress, and live loyally today, grow, and tomorrow will attend to itself. But we are also told that the human mind would ordinarily crave to approach cosmic philosophy portrayed in these revelations by proceeding from the simple and the finite to the complex and the infinite, from human origins to divine destinies. But that path does not lead to spiritual wisdom. Such a procedure is the easiest path to a certain form of genetic knowledge, but at best it can only reveal man's origins. It reveals little or nothing about his divine destinies. And so, Jesus taught both methods, evolution and revelation. And he excelled at both. To his apostles, he revealed a new epochal revelation. He asked them to live as if they were, in essence, morantial beings, even though they were very clearly men of this realm. And it was frustrating. Jesus would often say, "How long must I bear with you?" But to the masses, he would teach bottom up. We see this especially in his travels before his baptism, when he would interact with and teach the peoples throughout the world. But it was also true during his public teachings. He would teach in parable in part to make sure that his teachings were meeting the people where they were in their spiritual careers. He would build a short bridge between their lives and the beliefs of higher universal truths that he could impart. When I consider these two groups, I don't think I fit well into either camp. I am currently unwilling to give up my mortal career and become an apostle, and yet I crave a more advanced teaching than what is offered to the passing masses. And of course, there are more than two options, apostles or the masses. You can still be a dedicated follower of Jesus while you keep your mortal career. Discipleship. The disciples in the Urantia book are a not well-defined group that seem to encompass where the masses meet the dedicated followers of Jesus. Their numbers ebb and flow with the popularity of Jesus and are made up from a range of students, some of whom were merely curious enough to join Jesus' encampment for maybe a few days, to those who were dedicated enough to follow him all the way to the end. From these disciples comes the women's corps, comes Peter's evangelists, comes the 70. And here's the key appeal of discipleship to me. You are a faithful disciple, and you can remain such while you return home to minister to your loved ones. But not so with my gospel messengers. They have forsaken all to follow me and proclaim the kingdom. If you were to be ordained, you must be willing to forsake all. The gospel messengers cannot have divided affections. Jesus trained his apostles to be the mortal representatives of his revelation. They sacrificed, their sacrifice was to live a morantial career on earth. But the disciples were the highest groups of dedicated to Jesus' teachings, but they were to remain as tadpoles, as mortals of the realm. As Jesus lived and worked alongside his apostles and his more dedicated disciples, he'd give them intense sessions of teachings. He'd then send them out to the people to teach what they'd learned, and when they returned, they would discuss their experiences with each other, and Jesus used these experiences and resulting questions for further training. And this very natural and effective technique of learning by doing was carried on throughout the entire public ministry. And Jesus was the master teacher. The apostles were the human representatives of his revelation, and the disciples became the secondary teachers, passing on their knowledge and experience to others. In this way, Jesus' followers evolved and grew from being a confused, misinformed group of innocent truth seekers to become seasoned teachers. And it was an orderly system of training and teaching. For example, Peter was in charge of the school of the evangelists. The apostles did their share of teachings in groups, and the evangelists each forenoon, and both the teachers and the pupils then would go out and teach the people in the afternoon. After the evening meal, 5 nights a week, the apostles conducted question classes for the benefits of the evangelists, and once a week, Jesus would preside over this questioning hour, answering all the holdover questions from the previous sessions. Peter taught methods of public preaching. Nathanael instructed them in the arts of teaching. Thomas explained how to answer questions. Matthew directed them in the organizing of group finances. And the other apostles also participated in the training according to their special experience and natural talent. With this structure in mind, I invite us to consider a piece of advice from the early Urantia community. Quote, "You will do well to diligently study the order and plan and methods of progression as they were enacted in the earth career of Michael when the Word was made flesh. You are becoming actors in the ensuing episode when the Word is made book. Great is the difference in these dispensations of religion, but many are the lessons which can be learned from a study of the former age. You must again study the times of Jesus on earth. You must carefully take note of how the kingdom of heaven was inaugurated on this world." And so I offer this comparison of the fourth and fifth epical revelations. Jesus was the central figure and source of the fourth epical revelation. The apostles were his chosen representatives asked to live their morantial lives on this world. The disciples were the secondary teachers asked to live his teachings in their mortal careers. And then there were the masses. And when it comes to these numbers, the masses vastly overwhelm the number of disciples, right? But over the centuries, as the message of Jesus transformed and adapted and twisted, it spread across the globe to a place where now nearly every person has at least heard of Jesus of Nazareth. With the fifth epical revelation, we have the Urantia book, or at least the teachings therein, as the central object and source of revelation. There is no direct comparison between Jesus' apostles and the groups that we have today. No one is asked to leave their families and their worldly responsibilities in order to be an agent of the fifth revelation. Jesus chose his apostles as his mortal representatives, but the Urantia book doesn't choose representatives, right? And of course, there's still the masses, which is largely the same, this overwhelmingly large group who have done little or no direct interaction with the source of revelation. They depend upon others to be the conduit of revelatory teachings. And so here, where the masses meet the source of the revelation, where we had the disciples, we now have the global Urantia community. We are the faithful messengers who will minister to our friends, our family, and our own circles. We are not asked to personally represent an entire revelation, merely to spread its divine truths as we understand them, while we still fulfill the most sacred of all human trusts. And this is where I think I belong. The Jesus who is the teacher of the disciples is the Jesus that I understand best. And we, the modern disciples, we are short-handed and we are undertrained. The systemic training system that Jesus and the apostles developed has yet to be adapted by the fifth revelation. We have a book, and we have the lives that we live and the many communities that we operate in. I live my life with my family. I also work in a community of people in my career. I have a circle of friends. I have my local church. I have the group of people who I regularly interact with. My role as a disciple is to build short bridges between the Urantia teachings as I understand them and the communities I live in. Short bridges bridge short distances. You in your life will do half the work. It is too much to ask any one person to bridge all communities, but as you move freely between the several communities that you live in throughout your day, from your profession to your church to your friends to your hobbies to your Urantia studies, you need only to build small bridges to connect these groups and represent a revelation. Building a bridge is not an easy task. Some can do it naturally, but for most of us, it's a conscious effort, and it takes practice. The Urantia book tells us that the doing of the will of God is nothing more or less than an exhibition of creature willingness to share the inner life with God. If you believe, like I do, that our relationship with God will lead us to service of others, and if doing the will of God is sharing our inner life, then perhaps we can agree that part of our service to others involves sharing our inner life with them. And so here we are, faced with a challenge, to live with the conflict of evolution and revelation. As we go out into our discussion groups, I've left you with some questions. I know this is the last day. You might have conversations you need to finish in your discussion groups. You might have questions or comments you'd like to discuss first. Do those things first. If you need a Kickstarter for a conversation, I've left some questions for you in your rooms. They are in no particular order, and please insert your own. Thank you very much.